Norris with the NSA.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion, over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. I am your host, Smiles Lewis. This is the weekly live news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit charity, the Anomaly Archives, aka the Scientific Anomaly Institute. It is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. Oh my gosh. Thank you for joining us live or listening to the rebroadcast or the podcast or however you are interacting with us. We really appreciate it. As usual, you could, if you haven't already, hit the buttons that make YouTube happy and the algorithms work better. Ha ha ha, allegedly. Alrighty. So we have some fun stuff to get to tonight. And of course, you can find out more about our nonprofit at anomalyarchives.org. There you can also find links to information about our various activities, our preservation of over 7,000 items, 7,000 books, thousands of periodicals, and also maintaining our digital files. We also have a way for you to contact us. You can reach out to us via snail mail at our P.O. Box. That's P.O. Box 152252. That's P.O. Box 152252. Austin, Texas, 78715 zip code. And we also have a phone number. You can leave some voicemail with us at our Austin area code, 512-842-9046. That's area code 512-842-9046. Or you can email contact@anomalyarchives.org. Or I think we also have a Scientific Anomaly Institute at gmail.com, but that's a really lot to type out. So contact@anomalyarchives.org. Yeah. So, there's information at our website. And, of course, we have our Patreon, patreon.com/Anomaly Archives, where you can join for free. You can get our announcements and updates about what activities we're doing. And you can support us. If you have money and would like to help, we could use your help. So you can go to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives, and you can sign up for free or various tiers from $1, $2, $5, $10, or hey, heck, if you've got more money than me, you can give $20 a month. Anyway, the $10 a month or higher gets you access to our live monthly lecture series, the Anomaly Academy lecture series, and that also gets you access to the back catalog of the last 6+ months of material, and we'd appreciate your help. So coming up, I haven't yet sent out some announcements because this has only come up in the last 24 hours or so. A recently made friend, Mr. David S., has started a meetup group called, what is it called? The Austin Disclosure Meetup Group. And he's having his second get together, his second meetup next Thursday. That's not tomorrow, but Thursday, March 6, 2005. That's going to be at the Holdout Brewing Company. That's 1208 West 5th Street in downtown Austin. It's a new to me venue. I've been there a few times thanks to a former coworker, staffer of mine, turning me on to the place. And beers and alien cheers to Electric Boogaloo. So yeah, recently made the acquaintance of the host David, and we had some great conversation. And hey, if you're in the Austin area, maybe you'll drop in. We'd appreciate you coming by and talking weird stuff with us. We'd appreciate the opportunity. And thank you, David, for hosting. Meanwhile, of course, you can go to our flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives, and there'll be a link there that'll take you to this Flipboard, which has thousands of articles, some of which we'll be discussing tonight. There's just a ton of stuff here, some great links to videos, interviews, audio interviews, and news articles and whatnot. And we're going to be covering some of that tonight. So check it out. Man, you could just scroll on and on and on forever there. Or you could go to anomalyarchives.org, and we tend to archive all the past articles there as best we can. So first for tonight, I'd like to bring your attention to this brief blog post over at our friend Brent. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got the name wrong. Brian sent this. Who we had on sometime last year, I guess. His blog called skunkworksblog.com, notes towards the myth of things seen in the sky. And he's got this humorous little piece called 17ers and Believers. And I think it was he or somebody else online on Facebook probably mentioned this idea that I guess maybe Scott Brown coined, this idea of the 17er, meaning a person who refuses to acknowledge the long history of the study of UFOs before 2017, or a person who is completely ignorant to anything about UFOs before 2017. Usually these people focus on everything that has happened since 2017 within the study of UFOs. And some of the comments from that article, I just wanted to read. Brian Sintis says, quote, "The very coinage of 17er speaks to the frustration felt by those long interested in the topic, with much of the recent talk about it, not only among quote unquote amateurs, those bloggers, podcasters, and YouTubers, but more seriously, among the learned and elected. The whistleblower claims of David Grush are a case in point. As longtime researcher Kevin Randall observes, some of us have been around long enough that we can figure out what crashes Grush has been told about," unquote. Nevertheless, Grush testified before a relatively uninformed American government oversight committee, for which word of a quote-unquote multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, unquote, was an eyebrow-raising revelation. This post-2017 interest also emboldens quote-unquote believers in the quote-unquote reality of the quote-unquote phenomenon. He goes on to criticize some other academics who are fairly new to this, and I think Brian is a little critical of things that I'm kind of like, give them a break. They're catching up. But the whole point of this post and me bringing your attention to it is, yes, it's so frustrating. It's like talking to people in the world of politics who, well, 10, 15 years ago, who, you know, it's like foreign policy started with 9/11 for them, and they have no sense of history back there. But I think it's still the case. It's always the case with any subject matter that you get people who are quote unquote newbies into the field, and as much as they may turn up new stuff that's constantly coming to the fore. I've mentioned how there are several new podcasters who I actually do like, even as I'm frustrated by there being 17ers, so to speak, but who you know still manage to dig up interesting information that I hadn't been aware of, often because they're paying attention to those things that I just can't spend all my time watching. But that said, we're going to circle back around to that kind of a thing a little later in the show. Meanwhile, more interestingly, perhaps, there is, of course, as I've mentioned previously, a new Jacques Vallée book. Victor, remind me, I'm going to have to redo the audio. There is a new Jacques Vallée Journals, Volume 6. His Forbidden Science journals have just been, as I've said so many times, they are so incredibly important and helpful and insightful, and filled with loving attention to all things ufological, but also just reflect on him as a person who I really have always respected, even as we admit and recognize that we're all human, and Valet is human, and we all make mistakes. But there is a new series of interviews that are out now as he promotes the new book. And I think as he basically tries to cement his legacy, he is getting up there in age, and all his efforts with donating his collection to the Rice University Archives of the Impossible through his familiar friendship with Jeff Kripal. All these are, I think, part of him cementing the preservation of the materials that have been his life's work in this regard. And just finished listening to this interview today, posted by Micah Hanks over at his micahhanks.com/podcast page. This is one of his free podcasts that he does on a weekly basis. As I've said in previous episodes, highly recommend Micah's journalism and long-term commitment to investigating these strange phenomena. There are others that I would also recommend. The Somewhere in the Skies podcast that is done by Ryan Sprague, always great stuff. And he released this just the other day. And interestingly enough, and it's thanks to one of these other bloggers, vloggers, YouTubers that I was alluding to, who brought my attention to apparently this segment around the 37-minute, 30-second mark in this interview, which I have not yet had the chance to listen to other than this brief bit, which I'm not going to play for you here. You can go to Ryan Sprague's Somewhere in the Skies YouTube channel or listen to the audio podcast of this. But yeah, around the 37-minute, 30-second mark, Jacques Vallée talks about some kind of encounter or contact experience that he describes as, I think, having happened in some sort of out-of-body or astral state, which is pretty new information to those of us who perhaps aren't as close to him as others. But very interesting. I definitely think folks should check that out. And there's also, as another new person to the field, is who I've mentioned before, Tanner Boyle, whose Getting Spooked blog over at tannerfboyle.substack.com is excellent, highly recommended. He's been doing a series, and he's just released Dispatch number 8 on Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science. Let's have some levity, shall we? The funny, cheerful, poetic, and idiosyncratic within Jacques Vallée's diaries. And I really highly recommend you go and check this out. And one of the things I wanted to read from this are these excerpts here. Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science journals are not solely about UFOs or other forms of paranormal research. This is a fact. This fact is a beneficial distinction, part of what makes them rise above their competition within the broader genre of Fortean literature. They are emotional and intimate portraits of the fringe scenes as they progressed throughout the decades, often most interested in the omnipresent human factor. The entries are filled with humor, love, and the highs and lows of daily life. Vallée, too, while noted primarily for his work in ufology, is a man who wears many hats, and the journals cover them all, giving a complete picture of his always strange and interesting endeavors. He sought out the odd and the mystical, but the journal is not a spiritual manual. They are notebooks of everyday occurrences while still being active within varying subcultural groups that often have intriguing overlaps, indeed. And he ends the essay by saying, "It's not some grand rubric about how to investigate the paranormal, nor is it the self-indulgent memoirs of someone who considers themselves a titan of the field, though he is. Instead, the journal entries are marked with vulnerability and careful consideration of the events and experiences that have unfolded. Even as Vallée gives an impressively thoughtful and intriguing tour of the fringe as it develops through the decades, much like life itself, it's the small moments that count the most. I'd almost recommend reading the journals to a general audience if it weren't so full of niche nonsense. I'll settle for recommending it to everyone with a vague knowledge of UFO and fringe communities. Just don't go into it expecting the key to the UFO mystery. Forbidden Science may contain certain illuminations, but they mostly involve very human affairs and very human relationships. That's the most important part of these stories anyway. Maybe that is the inherent lesson." Well, thank you, Tanner Boyle, for helping direct people to this important work, and to Ryan Sprague and to Micah Hanks. yeah, I did listen to Micah Hanks' interview today and really enjoyed it as always. And in case that's not enough, and I have not had a chance to read this, but over at ufos-scientificresearch.blogspot.com, aka Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Scientific Research, is this Keith Basterfield article, More Things I Learned from Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science, Volume 6, that has lots of interesting headlines there. MRIs at Skinwalker Ranch, BAASS Bass Orb Video, Lone Stars. Yes, reference to Austin, Texas. Let me go ahead and read this. Between 8 November 2011 and 7 May 2018, there were a total of 11 meetings of a core group of individuals who had been associated with the Bass OSAP at locations as diverse as Toronto, Canada, Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Vienna, Austria. The core group started off with such individuals as Jacques Vallée, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, George Hathaway, Bob Bigelow, Kit Green, and later expanded to include Gary Nolan and others. One unnamed person, only referred to as the European sponsor, attended meetings in Vienna. And then other headlines include the European sponsor, New York Times article, Department of Defense UAP videos, and understanding the phenomena. So some great stuff there. And right. So where am I moving on to? I think. Yeah. All right. So, Victor, I think we're going to slip on over to Life in Jonestown, the Wimping Out on UFO Disclosure article by Billy Cox. And give me a moment here, folks. Right. So Billy Cox, if you're not familiar, he's been writing as a journalist on the UFO scene for a long time. His blog, lifeinjonestown.substack.com, is where you can find his work. And I really wanted to read a lot from this. So, of course, he's basically giving commentary on the new administration's push for quote unquote federal transparency. And some of the quotes that I'll read from this. He starts off by giving the idea that it's the whole, we're infested by plastics, these microplastics issue, and how that could be affecting our brains and the thinking and rational thinking processes. He's obviously trying to make a political point here. And I should say, of course, the opinions expressed by me or anything I present here are just those of me, or the things being presented here do not necessarily reflect those of the nonprofit Anomaly Archives. But I like what he has to say here. So jumping right in with all the many new players who are past or new parts of the current administration's entourage. Billy Cox says, quick question though. Why did Task Force Chair Rep. Anna Paulina Luna announce plans to visit Dealey Plaza 62 years later? Are there still some DNA-stained cigarette butts on the grassy knoll that we don't know about? And one other thing. What's this about Luna wanting to commune with the dead? Interviewing the quote-unquote attending physicians at the JFK autopsy and members of the Warren Commission? Hey, lady, at your public hearing next month? Spare us the grandstanding and just show us the secret docs, okay? Again, reference to what I had said last week. Jokes about, like, doesn't she know they're all dead? Like, are they going to break out the Ouija board, as I said? And then he goes on. Let's start with Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. At her confirmation hearing, Gabbard gave props to Luna's House task force. She correctly acknowledged their quote-unquote bipartisan frustrations over quote-unquote intelligence failures, as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information, including, quote, anomalous health incidents, that would be the Havana Syndrome, UAPs, drones, and more. And Billy Cox goes on, Merry Christmas. She told lawmakers she looked forward to working with them on these issues, and we look forward to evidence of that cooperation. Later on, it says, Billy Cox says, in 2021, safely out of office, Trump DNI John Ratcliffe didn't hesitate to tell the world that UFOs are being tracked by satellites. 2 years later, following the David Grush hearing in the House, he called for greater transparency. Unfortunately, he added, quote, the Biden administration made the decision to really not reveal much, unquote. All right. Well, later on in the article, Billy Cox says, now that he's the new boss at CIA, Ratcliffe has a chance to show us what fearless leadership looks like. He'll probably make it his mission to find out why the agency's former director of science and technology, Glenn Gaffney, allegedly scotched a deal that would have surreptitiously shuffled UFO material from Lockheed Martin to Bigelow Aerospace nearly 20 years ago. This is a famous documented incident. The only thing Ratcliffe needs in order to make that happen is a proper security clearance with a need-to-know card, plus a skiff to obtain a classified audience with Gaffney, assuming he wants to cooperate. Hopefully, lawmakers who want to find out what Gaffney tells Ratcliffe will be able to secure proper security clearances and their own need-to-know cards. Then they can, hopefully, get properly cleared to tell taxpayers what Ratcliffe says. In the immediate aftermath of Grush's testimony, Rep. Mike Waltz, former Army SF operator, went on record to concede the technological superiority of UFOs. Now that he's Trump's national security advisor, we can expect big changes, and we look forward to his office issuing regular status updates on how we're closing that gap. I think you can read into that Billy Cox's attitude. He's laying it all out there. He goes on, let's not forget new FBI Director Kash Patel. In February 2023, following the U.S. shootdowns of a Chinese spy balloon and 3 unknowns, the former ODNI principal director went on Fox News to say Beijing's balloons never entered U.S. airspace when Trump was president. As for UFOs flipping the bird at no-fly zones, well, he was a little less adamant. At the end of the day, he said, it's not a Biden or Trump thing. It's a United States of America national security thing, and this should be concerning for all citizens. Well, it's bigger than that, of course, but he wasn't incorrect. We didn't know until just a few weeks ago that the FBI had a UAP working group, and we found out only because former Navy pilot Ryan Graves alerted the media. Founder of Americans for Safe Aerospace, the airman who addressed Congress alongside Grush in 2023, told Politico there were a dozen or so agents exploring the phenomenon across the country, but some were fretting over getting canned for having done their jobs by looking into Trump's hoarding of unsecured top-secret nuclear documents at Mar-a-Lago and telling the National Archives to shove it. This puts America's top G-man in a bit of a pickle. But if Patel can persuade these dead men walking to turn over their notebooks before they get tossed and prosecuted, we'll call that a win. And yes, quite a bit more. Please indulge me. Billy Cox continues, stop making sense. But there's actually another way to do all this, cued by Ratcliffe's little Easter egg about UFO data being collected by satellites. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Chris Mellon, produced an aggressive blueprint for accountability in the debrief. A few weeks ago, it was triggered by the, quote, incredible disconnect between the military personnel UAP reports being forwarded to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office versus the utter lack of corroborative data, perhaps even willful non-compliance from our surveillance umbrella on the high frontier. Furthermore, those guardians of America's skies, the U.S. Air Force, have contributed nothing to the accountability effort whatsoever. Nada, bupkis, zilcho. Mellon's recommendations were so specific, he submitted his essay to the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review just to be safe. It included a list of assets, SSPAR, GOD, and a bunch of acronyms, and other sensor systems acronyms most people have never heard of. For lawmakers to interrogate without having to pass a new legislation or costing taxpayers a penny. His pitch sounds like basic common sense, especially given the absence of detailed incident reporting from NORAD, North American Defense Command. Without such data, Congress, Mellon points out, quote, cannot assess NORAD detection and intercept capabilities or evaluate the adequacy of U.S. air defenses. But there's a bit of foreboding in the solutions Mellon proposes. And I should probably not read all of this. He does invoke, Billy Cox does invoke here a phrase that has been in my head since the slash and burn approach of the two heads of the Hydra in charge right now. He says, there's an old Vietnam era cliche, quote, "We had to destroy the village in order to save it," now being cheered as a solution to eradicating quote unquote deep state malfeasance, especially as it pertains to the impermeable wall of secrecy surrounding UFO data, which festers at the core of our broken democracy. But starting the fumigation by firing at least 17 IG directors across institutions as diverse as education, state, EPA, defense, etc., is like eliminating security guards to foil bank robbers. There's clearly another agenda at play in UFO land. An aspiring trillionaire is steering this ship now, and as Musk's little army of hackers drill deep inside of bureaucracy's vaults, who knows what they'll find or what they've already scarfed up. Nobody's saying, and the judicial branch may not be elastic enough to stop them from doing whatever it is they're doing. Congress certainly won't. What if by some manner of dumb luck or through an unlocked back door, these Gen Z nerds stumble into the UFO stash? Think their boss is going to want the world to get a free look at the key to the future? Lawlessness begets lawlessness. Conflicted insiders who think humanity has a right to know the truth likely have a narrow window to beat Musk to the punch. The curtains are coming down. If Musk doesn't already have his hooks in the UFO stuff, he will soon. I can smell it. I have plastic in my brain, and so do you. Thank you, Billy, for that rant. It kind of captures a lot of my feeling about all of this. And I've already heard from at least one podcast source, and I do not know what their source is, the suggestion that Tyler from Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic, who is in fact Tim Taylor, not the actor, but the famous NASA person, is Elon Musk's handler. And that Elon Musk has already been shown the keys to the UFO kingdom. No sourcing on that one, so don't quote me. Uh-oh. All right. Yes. On to JFK facts. 1 month later, Trump's interim grade on JFK files. So this JFK assassination researcher, Jefferson Morley, who blogs over at jfkfacts.substack.com, a few days back, posted this, how you say, not a scorecard or what do you get in school? I don't even remember. Well, he scored a D+. The Trump administration. 1 month ago, President Trump signed Executive Order 14176, calling for full and complete disclosure of JFK assassination records. Everything will be revealed, he pledged. Yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but as you scroll through this, you can see that how Jefferson Morley decided to score this. He had a grading scale, obviously, from A to F, and the different areas, the new FBI files, George Joanide's file, other files, and totaled up these scores and came up with a D-. So haven't really had the chance to see, and I'm no expert on the JFK assassination, so a lot of this information doesn't mean anything to me. As I recently said to a friend, my favorite lefty conspiracy theorist, researcher, John Judge, once, and probably said this often, we don't have to study every blade of grass on the grassy knoll to know that the bullets that killed Kennedy came from the Pentagon. Or some think people believe. Moving right along to the HollywoodReporter.com and the ever-increasing media push to convince you of this new post-2017 reality to make the public at large 17ers. Age of Disclosure UFO documentary trailer touts biggest discovery in human history. 34 U.S. government and military officials get candid about the UFO UAP phenomenon in the first trailer for a newly announced shot in secret film by Dan Farrar, premiering at South by Southwest. Yes, that's right. South by Southwest is going to be the premiere for this new documentary. sorry, folks. I doubt I will be able to get into that because South by is just way too expensive. And while it would be nice to try to get some kind of press pass or discount for ye old nonprofit, I just don't think it's going to happen. But from the article, just briefly, as announced earlier Wednesday, the age of disclosure has earned a first-time director Farah a coveted premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival, where it will screen at the historic Paramount Theater in March. Great venue. Some of the officials interviewed include newly confirmed Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who says in the trailer that when it comes to this subject, quote, even presidents are operating on a need-to-know basis, unquote. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is going to be in it, as well as South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds and General Jim Clapper, who was a U.S. Director of National Intelligence under President Barack Obama. It concludes, or later on in the article says, Farah's producing credits include Ready Player One, which likewise scored a South by Southwest Film Festival premiere at the Paramount in 2018. The Age of Disclosure is a Farah Films production in association with Born Ready Films, produced and directed by Farah. Executive producers are Colin Frederick, Andrew Farah, and Shara Senderoff. We'll see. It looks incredibly well produced, very high quality production values. But I can't shake the feeling that there is an agenda here. And this reminds me, I don't know if I can bring this up or not. It's kind of a last minute. Oh, here. Yeah, I think I can bring. So, yeah, just let me, thank you, Victor. Let me see if I can bring this up. Yeah, so where is... So Kelly Chase, you know, I mentioned the show, I mentioned the docuseries Cosmosis on or two shows back. And Kelly Chase is, she's been doing the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast, and she was one of the hosts and producers of that Cosmosis docuseries. Well, apparently she has made some declarations. I knew she had announced that she was transitioning, she was ending her old UFO Rabbit Hole podcast and transitioning it to a new name called Cosmosis after the docuseries that they did. And she's made this public statement. In the final episode of the UFO Rabbit Hole, I shared how my views on disclosure have changed since I started the podcast. In short, while I support the disclosure movement, I don't really believe in the narrative that has been driving it anymore. I had some hesitation about voicing that publicly. The disclosure narrative is something that many people in this community are deeply invested in, and the backlash against people who dare to ask the obvious questions or to even speculate about the proverbial, quote, man behind the curtain, unquote, has been extreme at times. I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I won't be arguing with anyone in the comments. You're more than entitled to your opinion, but I'm also entitled to mine. And after the literally hundreds of messages that I've gotten from people thanking me for saying the quiet part of the disclosure narrative aloud, I feel like it's time for me to have the courage of my convictions and to say what I really think. The voices trying to strictly control the narrative in this community are loud, but they are woefully outnumbered. For the record, I think that some type of controlled disclosure is probably the right move, at least insofar as the government is concerned. I have supported it and I will continue to do so, but I strongly believe that we shouldn't be willing to let the narrative define or limit the conversation. There are plenty of us who see what's going on and who are ready to have an adult, nuanced conversation that doesn't villainize people who are doing their jobs or rely on a false grifter hero binary, but also doesn't require us to, quote, not believe our lying eyes. And then she apparently posted a clip, which I don't have because it's just a screenshot. Anyway, there you go. Oh, did I not share that? Oh, really? Was that image not being shared? Oh, well. On to Victor. Let's go on to Daily Grail. and our good friend Red Pill Junkie's announcement about from the high desert in the great American Southwest, Paul Giamatti to star as Art Bell in upcoming feature film. Yeah, not much to say about this other than I am excited to see this. I think it's just, again, part of the cashing in on the popularity of the subject. I certainly am a Paul Giamatti fan and look forward to seeing him take on this role, if indeed it does end up with him in the role. Of course, it was not too long ago when I discovered that he has his own podcast called Chinwag, where he talks about these kinds of phenomena as well as other paranormal and weird subject matter. And anytime we get an excuse to see some artwork by Miguel, as in this post, I'm all for it. And yet there is even more news from Deadline.com and also from that hashtag show.com. Joseph Kaczynski and Jerry Bruckheimer, my God, eyeing reteam on UFO disclosure themed feature, reported The Dish. And where is my notes on this? So, quote, following collaborations on smash hit Paramount sequel Top Gun Maverick and the forthcoming Formula One pick F1 for Apple and Warner Brothers, director Joseph Kaczynski and producer Jerry Bruckheimer are eyeing a reteam on a hot new package out to the town. We're told that the as yet untitled project is akin to a UFO disclosure themed take on All the President's Men, the classic 1976 political thriller from Alan J. Pakula. Basulka? At least 9 bids for the project are in around town from suitors like Amazon, Skydance, Lionsgate, Sony, Warner Brothers, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, I guess, Apple, and Universal. Kaczynski will direct from a script by Zach Balin, the Oscar-nominated scribe behind The Order and King Richard, with Bruckheimer producing. David Grush, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer and Pentagon whistleblower who gained attention in 2023 for his claims about the U.S. government's involvement in unidentified aerial phenomena research, will executive produce and serve as a consultant on the project. Lordy. Meanwhile, at that other link, that hashtag show.com, Apple is looking to land UFO disclosure film from Joseph Kaczynski and Jerry Bruckheimer. Bids were made on the movie last week from the various studios, and Deadline is reporting that Apple ended up winning the bid because of the strong relationship between Kaczynski and the studio on their upcoming F1 movie. That movie stars Brad Pitt and comes out this June. It's one of the most anticipated movies of 2025 so far. Who cares? A former whistleblower and U.S. Air Force intelligence officer, David Grush, was a consultant on the project and will serve as an executive producer. He made waves in 2023 for his claims about the U.S. government's involvement in unidentified aerial phenomena research. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. And I think this article also notes that it could be coming out and go head-to-head with the upcoming Steven Spielberg UFO movie, which I think may actually be called Disclosure. Goodness, it's like somebody's trying to tell us something. All right. What else we got here? I was going to comment on a couple of parapolitical-oriented things. This phrase kept popping up into my head recently, and this Wikipedia page sums it up and gives the details. It's the phrase is reality-based community, and as Wikipedia says, oh, that bastion of truth and reality. I know. It's got its problems, but hey, it's better than some things. It's probably better than AI synopses, but not much. Yes, from the Wikipedia, reality-based community is a derisive term for people who base judgments on facts. It was first attributed to a senior official working for U.S. President George W. Bush by the reporter Ron Suskind in 2004. 21 years ago. Many American liberals adopted the label for themselves, using it to portray themselves as adhering to facts in contradiction to conservatives presumed to be disregarding professional and scientific expertise. This really seems so relevant for the last several years. The phrase was attributed by journalist Ron Suskind to an unnamed official in the George W. Bush administration who used it to denigrate a critic of the administration's policies as someone who based their judgment on facts. In a 2004 article appearing in the New York Times Magazine, Suskind wrote, "The aide said that guys like me were, quote, in what we call the reality-based community, which he defined as people who, quote, believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. Quote, that's not the way the world really works anymore," he continued. "We're an empire now, and we act. We create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality judiciously as you will, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to just study what we do." International relations scholar Fred Halliday writes that the phrase reality-based community, in contrast to faith-based community, was used, quote, for those who did not share the Bush administration's international goals and aspirations. Suskind has maintained his refusal to name the speaker, but the source of the quotation was widely speculated to be Bush's senior advisor, Karl Rove. Oh. Yeah, you can read the rest here, but it really seems so resonant, as it says also, see also, alternative facts, fake news, truthiness. Very relevant. And on the same subject matter, is this idea of the deep state. And over at a site I maintain, I just quoted some information where I just said, as I was saying to some friends recently, deep state is just another example of a perfectly useful term co-opted by others. Its origins are generally considered to be from the writing of Peter Dale Scott's use of the words, phrases, parapolitics and deep politics. And in fact, we provide links there to several citations from the last several years. The Deep State is Real, but It's Not What Trump Thinks It Is by David Rode over at, what website is that? That's, what was it, Vox.com. Quote, for decades, the term deep state was applied to Turkey. It was a reference to the Turkish military and their efforts to slow the spread of democracy there. Some applied it to Egypt and the Egyptian military to describe the same thing. The first time I found that the term deep state was applied to the U.S. government was a book written in 2007 by a University of California, Berkeley professor named Peter Dale Scott. Now, that I'm not sure what the first iteration of that is, but there are a couple of relevant books by Peter Dale Scott, including that touch on this, including The American Deep State, Big Money, Big Oil, and the Struggle for U.S. Democracy, as well as Deep Politics and the Death of JFK, which, quote, presents a documented investigation that uncovers the secrets surrounding John F. Kennedy's assassination, offering a different perspective that JFK's death was not just an isolated case, but rather a symptom of hidden processes. This title examines the deep politics of early 1960s American international and domestic policies. And then there's a longer exploration of this in a paper over at tandfonline.com, or Origins of the Deep State Trope, as well as other links there. And of course, you can do your own searches and find more information about that. Okay, let's move right along and see if I can get this to play. If the audio... Okay, so hopefully this audio will play and we'll get into what this is about. This is Ross Coulthart on Reality Check on News Nation doing a brief Q&A where someone asked, let's see, somebody was describing a place that he described as having gone to, and they wanted more information about that.
It's a retreat called Esalen, Esalen. It's about 3.5 hours drive south of San Francisco on the West Coast. It's a beautiful place. If anybody is ever driving down the coast there, they should really invite themselves in and use the bookshop and have a look around. It's a gorgeous location that's rented out by conferences and retreats. And I was lucky enough to go there as part of the Essia Explorers Club run by Alex Clokus, in which Jake Barber and I gave presentations to a lot of individuals who'd come from all over America and indeed all over the world, including scientists at the forefront of neuroscience and our understanding of the universe. And there was some amazing things demonstrated, including telepathic Indian children. And we also filmed and observed a summoning by one of the psionic operators who's working with Skywatcher. So Esalen, Esalen, is the retreat that I'm talking about.
Speaking of psionic.
All right. So he misspoke about the location or place, or excuse me, I think he said Essia, but it's Ennea, ENNEA.io.com, not .com, excuse me. Ennea, ENNEA.io is where you'll find this website, the Explorers Club, an invitational community of patrons, entrepreneurs, scientists, and mystics working at the forefront of consciousness. Our inaugural gathering will be held at the Esalen Institute October 2024. So that's what he was referring to. So basically, some folks online, where else, found photos from this event posted to social media. They are still available online. And apparently this is, as he mentioned, Alex Clokus's organization or endeavor. And for those that aren't familiar, Alex Clokus is the very wealthy entrepreneur behind Futurism and the SALT conference. And a lot of hay has been made about this and this idea of how strange it is that this happened. And part of why this occurred, let's see if I can. So like I said, there's a number of pictures available from this online. The thing about Esalen is it's really intended as a private place that people go to, and it's really not something it's generally frowned upon for people who participate in there to talk about them afterwards, or to especially to name names and to post photos online. However, we're in a new age. It's the age of social media, and of course there are tons of photos of this out there, and including pictures of Ross Coulthart, pictures of Alex Clokus and others. There's speculation that there may have been other high-level tech bro guys like Jack Dorsey or others. None of that's been confirmed, but as Ross described there, and as he and others have described in his interview with Jake Barber, there were some very high-level people there, and it was a wide range of woo from the idea of, I believe, telepathic and or telekinetic children to Jake Barber and the Alex Clokus Sky Watcher, or whatever the name of their organization is, doing psionic summoning of UFO, UAP, and allegedly a ball of light did come down and interact with some people. Don't think there's any photos or video of that, but it's interesting if you know some of the history about Esalen. I will show you this one picture. This was published by podcaster, YouTuber Patrick of Vetted. And yes, here you can see on those 3 red circles on the far left, that is on the far left, Ross Coulthart, and then Jake Barber and Dave Grush, all there on the left side of the screen. And then over on the right side is, on the furthest right, Alex Clokus, as well as to his left, or his right, your left, the person that some people think is Jack Dorsey. But there's a lot of other pictures. You can find them. I might post a link to them. We'll see. But anyway, Esalen is a very interesting place, and I will just say that I know some people who've been to some of the more private UFO conferences there. They've been going on for years. If you do a search for Esalen conspiracy, you will find information like the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, has been involved in a number of conspiracy theories, including UFOs and mind control. Esalen's early years were linked to UFOs, and the Institute hosted 2 major conferences on the subject. Jeff Kripal, a researcher and author on paranormal activity, says that Esalen's early exploration of the unseen included UFOs. Mind control. Michael Murphy, a researcher who advised the U.S. government on mind control, has written about Esalen, Huxley, and Alan Watts. There are a lot of crazy stories about Esalen, but as it says here, it's a wellness retreat that was founded in 1962 to promote human potentiality. Has been featured in Hollywood movies, including Serial, Bob and Carol, and Ted and Alice, and Inherent Vice. There's a lot of information out there. There's a old New Yorker article from 2019, which came up when I was looking for Esalen-Gorbachev controversy. That says, though it's paywalled now, but it says, not even Mr. Gorbachev, that he vowed to dismantle Bolshevism once and for all. Quote, Esalen played its own part in the collapse of Soviet communism, which reminded me that basically this is what people described as hot tub diplomacy, among other things. And in fact, you can go to the Esalen website. That's esalen.org, ESALEN.org, where there is this article by Christine Chen, Early Esalen UFOs and Exploration of New Life, a Jeff Kripal perspective. And you can check that out there. There is also these older articles, this one from atlasobscura.com, how a famed New Age retreat center helped end the Cold War. And there he is. Boris Yeltsin strikes a pose in his Moscow office. And other articles like this one over at newageru.hypotheses.org. New Age Diplomacy, the role of the Esalen Institute in ending the Cold War. And all of this also reminds me of, we've mentioned, I think, in the last episode or two, Carol Rosin. And one of the weird things I found when I was creating our page for her was, where is this? Yes. Psychedelics, the newest tool in nuclear negotiations, unquote. This one from 2021, thebulletin.org. Quote, the plan was simple. Give the psychedelic drug MDMA, popularly known as ecstasy, to Soviet scientists and military personnel set to negotiate with U.S. President Ronald Reagan in 1985, thereby injecting empathy and cross-cultural understanding into the nuclear peace process. So that's just what Rick Doblin and Carol Rosin said they did, and they still believe introducing psychedelics into nuclear negotiations can produce positive results. Awesome. And on that note, if you want to talk about, we're not going to be taking psychedelics, but if you want to join me and host David at Beers and Alien Cheers 2 Electric Boogaloo next Thursday, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. That's Thursday, March 6th, 2025 at 5 p.m. at the Holdout Brewing location, 1208 West 4th Street. You can check us out there. I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for joining. Please like and subscribe, all that good stuff. You can go to anomalyarchives.org and subscribe to the blog. You can go to patreon.com/anomalyarchives and subscribe for free, or help fund getting us a new physical location. We need your help. And we'll see you again very soon. Good night.